You're all set, Wanda, but you're muted.
Good evening, everyone. I want to thank everyone for joining us for our Audit and Finance 2022 budget meeting. Tonight, we will be hosting the Human Service Agencies of Albany County, which is the Veterans, the Crime Victims, Social Services, and Children, Youth, and Family Services. So before we get into that, I am going to take attendance, and we will start with that. Mr. Beston?
Here.
Mr. Brewski? Mr. Bergdorf? Ms. Chapman?
We can't hear anything now.
Mr. Clay?
Here.
There we go.
Mr. Cleary?
Here.
Mr. Calypso?
Here.
Ms. Cunningham?
Here.
Mr. Demolowitz? Mr. Drake?
What tell me?
Mr. Epicoro?
Yeah.
Mr. Ethier? Mr. Feeney? Mr. Fine?
Here.
Mr. Grimm?
Here.
Mr. Ray Joyce? Mr. Clinton? Ms. Lakakis?
Here.
Ms. Lockhart?
Here.
Mr. Moriello?
Here.
Mr. Mayo?
Here.
Ms. McLaughlin?
Here.
Ms. McLean Lane? Mr. Miller?
Sorry, present.
Very good. Mr. O'Brien?
Here.
Mr. Purley?
Here.
Mr. Peter?
Here.
Ms. Plotski? Mr. Reedy?
Here.
Mr. Reinhardt? Mr. Ricard? Mr. Simpson?
Here.
Mr. Smith? Mr. Touche?
Present.
Mr. Tunney?
Here.
Mr. Ward? Ms. Whalen? And Ms. Willingham is present.
Ms. Chapman is here, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chapman. So tonight I have present as far as our standing committee. For the Standing Committee Social Services, I have Chair Mr. Sam Fine. He is present. For Children, Youth, and Family Services, again, Sam Fine is Chair. We also have Mr. Dustin Reedy present as Vice Chair. Excuse me. Dustin Reedy is present as Vice Chair, and the Chair of the Health Committee, Mr. Raymond Joyce, he is also present. So we're going to begin now. We will start. So I just want to say good evening and welcome to the Audit and Finance Committee 2022 Agency Budgets Review. So to you department heads, you will be asked a series of questions related to your budget and are expected to answer as completely as you can. If an answer to our questions cannot be provided at this time, then please indicate when you are able to provide it to the committee. Legislators have been provided with your written responses to our budget information request letter, and we thank you for your cooperation in providing them. However, in order to complete a more thorough examination of your budget, it may be necessary to forward you some additional questions after tonight's hearing. I'd like to make a note now to the members. Please hold questions regarding salary increases and retitled lines that have not been requested by departments, but were included in the agency's proposed budget column for 2022. Those questions will be addressed by the Deputy County Executive at the November 3rd, 2021 meeting. At that meeting, details will be provided about the comprehensive workforce development plan and related salary retitled line changes. So we're going to begin tonight with the Veterans Bureau. And I am going to ask Director Ken Secor, please provide us with a brief summary of your budget and how it meets your department's needs for 2022. Mr. Secor?
Good morning, ma'am, or good evening, ma'am.
How are you today?
Doing very well, thank you.
Okay, great.
So our budget is a very, very minor increase, and this will allow us to do all the things that we were doing previous to COVID, such as outreach and reaching the underserved population of veterans in Albany County.
Can I just ask you one question?
I didn't see her now.
Ken?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Can you tell me the types of programs that the Veterans Services Bureau provides?
Absolutely, ma'am. We provide a variety of different services to veterans within Albany County. There's approximately 16,000 veterans within Albany County. And what we do is we provide resources and services to them. Our biggest thing that we do is filing claims with the VA. We also lead them to other resources that the VA or other veteran organizations within the county provide. Approximately 2/3 of our veterans are over the age of 60. So we find ourselves working a lot with the Department of Social Services and the Department of Aging to provide resources.
That's wonderful. Now, those are my questions. Do we have any questions from any of the members? Mr. Grimm?
You have to be a member of the committee to.
No, Mr. Grimm? We can't hear you. Mark?
Mark, there's some kind of technical issue. It doesn't sound right.
Thank you.
This
Thank you,
Carol,
Mouse.
can I ask a question?
Want to text the question?
Hold on a moment, everyone. Mark? Okay, so while we're trying to get him in, Carolyn, would you like to go ahead? And after Carolyn, Lynn, please, Mr. Cactus.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Did you say what percentage of the 16,000 veterans in Albany County are over age 60? Or did you just say a lot higher number of them are?
It's approximately 2/3, ma'am.
2/3. And do you have is there some kind of relationship that we have with the Veterans Administration? Do we have a formal relationship with them?
We do not have a formal relationship. We work with several of their departments as cases come up.
Okay. Also, do you know how many of those veterans are in nursing facilities or long-term service facilities?
That is a good question, ma'am. I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that when we were working with the Shaker Place, about 1/3 of the residents over there are veterans. The Shaker Place actually works with the VA hospital, taking veterans that need that care.
Okay, and I know I saw something the other day on the news about the Veterans Hospital about to set up a wing for women. You know, of those veterans in our county, how many are women?
It's not a big percentage, ma'am, but I will tell you that the current military is pushing upwards of about 16%. So I'm predicting that within the next 2 to 5 years, that's probably going to be a bare minimum of the percentage of veterans that we have within Albany County that are females. So programs like that are definitely going to be needed in the future. They're needed now, but they're going to be really needed in the future.
So as you develop outreach programs, do you plan to develop some, I would suggest you develop some targeting with female veterans?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, we have been targeting some of our outreach with the new women's home that opened up in Troy. We also work with the Veterans and Community Housing Coalition up in Saratoga County, which handles a lot of female veterans. And they are working right now on actually opening up a home for homeless female veterans and their children, which is a resource that is not anywhere in this region.
Thank you very much. It sounds like some real opportunities here to serve those who have served us so well. So thank you so much for your answers.
Thank you, Ms. McLaughlin. Ms. Lakakis?
I'm all right. I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Grimm?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Hey, oh, great. Thanks, Madam Chair. Yeah, Ken, I'm reading your pages, budget pages. I don't see any statistics, especially now that the county's hired a data person. I think going forward, I think I'd like to see more statistics on what we accomplished. Namely, how many vets actually do we interact with each year? And how many, and what were the results of that interaction? Do you have any statistics on that?
I don't have specific numbers, but the majority of our cases involve filing claims and for benefits with the VA.
So yeah, for example, I'd be interested in what percentage involve claims filing, but do you have a ballpark number on how many vets actually interact with our office?
I would say on a weekly basis, we probably field about somewhere between 100 to 120 calls for resources. Of those, I would say 30 to 40 are actual claims with the VA, and the rest of those are just resources.
Just people asking where to turn, basically. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, or help getting those resources, which may include filing applications or forms, things like that.
Or making them aware of stuff that's available to them. Yeah, no, if you could keep track of that, that'd be very helpful in order to judge, what our accomplishments are. That'd be great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Grimm. I have one more question for you, Ken. I noticed in the special programs, we've gone from 2,800 up to 11,000.
Yes, ma'am. Prior to me taking over 4 years ago, to be honest with you, I'm not sure how we were operating on the budget we had. So I had to make some gradual increases to request for the budget. The amount that we're requesting now will allow us to do all the outreach and things that we want to do. One of the big things is outreach into some of the outlying areas like Westerlo, Bern. We've actually also opened up another outreach center with the Veterans Miracle Center. So we're hitting up some of the underprivileged veterans to provide services.
All right, very good. I just want to thank you for all of the work that you do. I have family members that are veterans, and so we want all of our veterans to know that we think very highly of them and we're concerned about them here in Albany County. So thank you for your service. If there are no other questions from any of the members, we will bid good night. Who's that? Frank?
Madam Chair, Frank
Mr. Camiso.
Could you tell me if we're providing funds for flags for the grave sites?
Yes, sir, we are. Within Albany County, we have a joint Veterans Committee, and they manage, they coordinate all the events for Veterans Day and Memorial Day. So we do provide funding for flags for Memorial Day to make sure that we get flags out at the cemeteries within Albany County.
Very good. Thank you.
Madam Chairwoman, can I speak to that really quickly?
Mr. Riley, is that you?
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead, sir.
So I just wanted to give Mr. Camiso a little color on that, just so you're aware. The flags line is going up $1,000 from $5,000 to $6,000.
Very good.
Thank you. Do you have any other questions, Mr. Camiso?
No, I do not.
All right. If there are no other questions from any other members, I don't see anyone's hands up. We're gonna say good evening to Mr. Secor.
Thank you, everyone.
Before we move on to crime victims, I just want to recognize that I do see that Mr. Brewski is also present this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
And Madam Chair, I cut out too. This is Ray Joyce. If you could note my attendance, please.
And Mr. Ray Joyce, who is Chairperson of the Health Committee.
Madam Chair, this is Sean Ward signing on as well.
Oh, thank you. And Mr. Sean Ward. All right, so now we will move on to crime victims, which is found on pages 102 through 107 in your budget book. And our presenter will be Director Karen Ziegler. Are you here, Ms. Ziegler?
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of Audit and Finance, and other members of the legislative body. Thank you so much for your time this evening. I appreciate it. Crime victims had an amazing year last year with COVID. We were able to provide all of our services while working remotely. We had an influx of monies from a number of our grantors that allowed us to make investments in technology. We have been able to expand, and we are now very, very soon going to be able to offer an off-site clinic, which will benefit the west side of Albany County, the more rural areas. We're very excited about that. We're just waiting, like everybody else is, for furniture to be delivered. We have our 6 programs. We have our core advocacy, we have our therapy, our hotline, and including a chat line that we added last year. We have our campus services. We have our case management services. We are just robust in what we're able to provide. The community mobilization, the Safer Bars work that we're doing is just exciting. I hope you got to see our bus ads, our shelter ads and our bus ads this past winter. So we've been very, very active. We have been serving our victims and expanding our services to best of our ability. And we're just very excited to continue our work. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions?
Madam Chair?
Mr. Grimm.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Karen, just I want to make sure I'm reading this right in the budget. Your total appropriations are 1.6 million, and yet your revenues are 1.34 million. Is that correct?
We share grant funding. We have 2 of our grants. Our Division of Criminal Justice Services is a shared grant with both the DA's office and the sheriff, and they have some funding out of it. And we have a Department of Health CDC grant in which we are one of 3 counties. It includes Schenectady County and Oneida County. So although our revenues are 1.6, our actual expenditures are a little less because we are the lead agency on those 2 grants.
Right. So the county share to fund your agency is just $256,000.
Mr. Grimm, we are the most amazing department in the entire county. I feel no shame in saying
I want to know more about this because you have 17 employees and you deal with 3,500 individuals a year. But apparently it's only $256,000 to our cost.
We have, I write the grants, I manage the grants, and I am incredibly busy with that. I'd like to get more grant funding if it's at all possible. In talking we just had the Veterans Bureau. It made me think of a program I had suggested a few years ago to the state legislature, and maybe I could pursue some funding around serving women's veterans around that as well. So we're very active in our grant writing and our grant management. We minimize our county share as much as possible, and we pursue every dollar we can.
Apparently. Is there any chance they may dry up with all the things that are going on, or what's your expectation for the future?
I don't see any problems with that. We are locked into multi-year contracts at this time. The VOCA was the only small blip, but that was fixed. And we are actively lobbying, not ourselves personally, the NISCASA and NISCADIV, the state agencies that do the lobbying on behalf of the programs, are lobbying for state support while those larger VAWA and VOCA budgets on a federal level are become fully funded again. So we don't really see any problems going forward.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. And thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Mr. Grimm. Are there any other questions from any other members? If not, we just want to thank you for Ms. Ziegler for your presentation tonight. And since there are no other questions, I just want to bid you a good evening.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
You're very welcome.
Bye-bye.
Our next presenter presentation will be given by Social Services, our standing committees under Social Services. Social Services, Sam Fine is the chair, and Mr. Commisso is the vice chair. So our presentation will be given by Michelle Mcclay, who is the commissioner. You can find Social Services on page 188 through 204 in your budget book.
Oh, can you tell them to? Yeah, thank you.
I just wanted to say one thing before you begin, Ms. Mcclay. I'll just ask one question, then we'll just go on from there. Are the programs that are serving large segments of vulnerable populations or low-income individuals being cut or programmatically being changed in any way? And what, if any, impacts to vulnerable populations you serve will result from this budget? Please move on with your presentation.
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Chair and committee and legislators. I just want to introduce who is with me tonight to provide any backup information or support. I have Joe Viscuzzo, who is our Director of Accounts, Walter Fischlinger, who is our Program Analyst in the Budget and Accounting Office. Aaron Stakowitz is our Executive Deputy Commissioner, and Val Sachs is our Deputy Commissioner. At this point, the budget we're presenting, we do not expect any cut or change in the services that we are presenting, and that we will continue to serve the populations that we have always been serving, which pretty much everybody who comes to DSS is what I would consider a vulnerable population from a at-risk or vulnerable population. That's what we do. So DSS overall is offering a budget for 2022 of $134 million, which includes a county share decrease of $1.5 million from 2021, or minus 1.88%. That county share decrease is largely due to a decrease in the Medicaid share charge. That projected total Medicaid share is $68 million, with the county share decrease of $2.48 million over 2021. This is, as you know, a county charge paid weekly, required by New York State, and is non-negotiable. There's also a swing in administration appropriation and revenue, primarily related to the transfer of about $9 million in Treasury funding that came to DSS last year, that we transferred to the Office of Temporary and Disability Assistance to administer the Emergency Rent Assistance Program. Just to give you an update, our outreach and engagement efforts for that program have enrolled 3,500 renters to receive ERAP. To date, as of a couple weeks ago, OTDA reported that 950 renters in Albany County had received, the landlords for those renters had received payments of $7.4 million. The remaining budget is $65 million provides for the rest of our services. Mandated programs, payments to and on behalf of clients, as well as our staffing. And we're proposing 311 positions with several position title changes to reflect our workforce development plan and corrections to titles of several positions to reflect current civil service designations. And during economic distress, DSS is the safety net for many facing financial hardship. Just to give you an idea, our applications for SNAP have been consistently high since March of 2020. The HEAP program has been open all year. Those applications are significantly up as well. As expected, our temporary assistance applications and applications for emergency assistance are increasing daily. We project a very demanding code blue season with many more families and individuals transitioning from their housing or potentially getting evicted. And we're seeing an uptick once again in the need for quarantine shelter options for our homeless who are experiencing some COVID infection. And as the population continues to age, we are receiving more and more inquiries for our home care services and adult protective inquiries. And DSS staff have been here for the community throughout this year and provided support to those in need in the middle of a continuing epidemic. I'm proud of our staff for this work and thank everyone at DSS for their dedication and continuing diligent efforts through what has been an extraordinarily challenging time. And I thank the County Exec's Office for supporting us and continuing to provide these essential services. We're here for any questions you might have.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. I'm just going to start with the question. I noticed you're up 3 positions from the previous year. And one of those is a special assistant to the commissioner. Can you please explain what the job duties are of the special assistant?
That is not a new position. That's a title change to again reflect the correct civil service designation. So that is a position that assists us in reviewing our data, our engaging with we have about 100 different data systems and reporting systems with New York State, helping us understand those and manage those and try to figure out better ways of working with that system and our new queuing system. So it's really, in the age of much data and information, it's someone who's experienced in looking through the systems and telling us kind of what we're doing.
All right, thank you. I'm going to let Matt Peter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Mcclay, how are you today? I have 3 questions for you. One of them is quite long, so I'm going to ask the first 2, and then we'll go to the third one, as you might need to get back to us a little bit. Sorry about that. We're sharing a computer here. The first one is Medicaid account A6100 is decreasing by 2.3 million year over year. Can you explain that?
I'm sorry, could you just repeat that again? I
Certainly.
couldn't understand.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Medicaid account A.6100 is decreasing by 2.3 million year to year. Can you please explain why?
I'm going to have Joe Viscuso give you that.
So the Medicaid account is based on 52 weekly shares. The first 13 weekly shares are part of a New York State budget that we already know what the number is. And then the following 39 shares will be in the following budget. So the first 13 shares of 2022 are less than the shares that we had in the previous 39. So it's driving the cost of Medicaid down for Albany County. And then we projected what we thought would be a moderate or conservative increase to Medicaid for the last 39 shares. So it really is based on a reduction to the county's cost, which is driven by enhanced federal funding. It's enhanced federal funding, which is offsetting some of the county share.
Got it. That answered our question. Thank you. Second question is with the heating costs rising, I know we talked about heat. I know there was an announcement, I believe $150 million statewide. Do we believe the increase that was announced in funding for that will cover sort of the increased need and demand that we're seeing? Or do you think additional subsidies or allocations will be necessary?
Yeah, we can't predict.
We don't even appropriate.
Yeah, we don't have that in our budget. That is 100%, HEAP is 100% federally funded. And the $150 million that the governor announced also is coming through OTDA, not through DSS. However, our clients will be able to access that program. And we're feeling pretty comfortable that there's a lot of resources available this winter right now between the enhanced HEAP. That program is really to help pay back heating bills. So somebody who has accumulated a large bill, that new program will allow them to pay that back so that they can get caught up. And then there's the regular HEAP program, which pays for emergencies and for people who are income eligible, and helps to do clean and tunes for people's furnaces and also repair and buy new furnaces if they're eligible. Then there is also through the ERAP program, utilities were paid as well. So we're feeling pretty comfortable that there's a good deal of resources out there for the heating season.
Gotcha. Thank you. This one's a little more complicated, and I also understand that there's a lot of caveats to this. We got several questions from multiple members on questions about transitional housing and sort of the different levels of it, reimbursement levels and things like that. So I'm going to sort of list the questions that we sort of have in as much of a condensed version, with the understanding that you may have to get back to us and give us more of a document, and that's okay. So if what I'm asking for is too detailed to respond right away, again, getting us something next week is okay. So feel free to say that. In short, with transitional housing, when it talks about our relationships with, and in your presentation, in our relationships with homeless shelters, we want to understand what the county relationship is to those homeless shelters. Are we guaranteeing the beds? Are we paying a fee? Are the individuals going to that area, going to those shelters, having to pay any type of fee? And does that go back to the county or the shelter? And then from there, what type of transitional services does the county allow for from there? And then following from that, based when folks are facing eviction or financial difficulties, what type of transitional housing, if any, does the county provide, and what is that relationship and where that is on the budget lines? Following from that, what is the relationship, or does it just have to do with parole and things of that nature for people recently released from prison, and how is that transitional housing handled? And finally, for people with addiction services and things of that need, what is the county's handling of those transitional services and transitional housing? So again, I understand that's a lot. And I know there's different relationships on each one of those levels, but we got about 12 different questions asking about different levels, and that was the best I could do.
So we'll have to give you a much longer description of our different programs. But on the budget, we provide emergency assistance to people who are facing eviction, and that is through our
safety net.
The safety net line. We pay a lot of emergencies through there, and through the TANF line as well. And our emergency shelters are we have contracts with emergency shelters. So we pay them directly.
I think just for greater understanding, I understand you might need to get back to us, understanding what those contracts are, what the terms of those are, what we pay out versus get in. I think also understanding if we give anyone a stipend for housing or supportive housing or transitional housing, understanding what that amount is also very helpful. Now I understand, again, I'm fine, like if you honestly want to give us a chart that sort of gives the parameters, what we're allowed to do in the relationships and on what budget lines those are found, we would then hand that out to members so that everyone can have a firm understanding.
Just so you know, we really have very limited role in paying for housing on a long-term basis.
No, I think that's understood.
Yeah, except for our shelters. And we do, we have contracts that go through the Social Services Committee. And that we have multiple contracts with multiple shelters. And just so you know, we have a very good working relationship with all of our shelters. We're in constant contact with them, and they're very cooperative with us. So
yep. I think any type of information on what we pay per bed, how we react to transitional stuff, how we account for it, if there's any type of fee that the individual pays, if it goes directly to it, that's the sort of information. I understand the contracts, I understand that. Like I'm just, I think that's the feedback we would like to get. Just understanding by each program's the parameters, what we pay, and then even though it's limited on the transitional side in getting housing, we sort of want to understand what that is, because one of the biggest questions we have is, if the idea is to stop people getting into shelters, then there needs to be a bridge into transitional housing, and we need, as the legislature, to understand what type of resources are available for those transitional, what we're offering, and what the gap is, because that's where a lot of our questions are coming from the members, because there's complaints among constituencies that are basically like, there's not enough resource as the people are trying to get back on their feet if they're coming from a mission setting or from a parole setting, et cetera, and the potential stipend that they may get or helping hand is enough to find quality or basic housing. So I think, again, we don't need an answer tonight. I don't want to put anyone on the spot on that, but that is the questions that we have.
And I'll say also, yes, I can provide what DSS's role is, but keep in mind there are many, many other providers out there. Albany Housing Authority, there's tenant associations, there's CARES, which provides emergency solutions grant funding. So there's money that goes into the community for housing that is not related to DSS. So
understood.
DSS is only one piece of the whole puzzle for that. So,
right, and I would suggest that in any documents you give, you sort of put out where sort of your side stops and then who picks up the slack afterwards. Because again, I think that's where some confusion among members is coming from, is understanding where DSS stops and where someone else begins. Because as we're trying to help our constituencies navigate this, it becomes a finger pointing. I think some of our members would like some clarity. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Mr. Simpson, I see your hand up, waving vigorously. So I'm going to call on you right now.
Commissioner, I'm not sure whether you've heard about it or not, but so September 23rd, it was a really hellacious rain, one of those rains that W.C. Fields would say, it's not a fit night out for man nor beast. The following day, one of the residents literally around the corner from me was relocated out of their residence because of significant water damage from that rain. And, fortunately, when myself and Andrew Joyce got to the scene on the 24th, there were two social service workers from adult services there to meet us. And we were able to, collectively, Norma Chapman, transition the person to the Schuyler Inn. But what I wanted to ask you was, I've gotten universal non-positive feedback on the Schuyler Inn. And if you go online, there are several people who are really critical of it. To the degree that we have a contractual relationship, are we doing anything to improve the accommodations there? And are we looking for additional alternative sites that may be in better condition to deal with the continual need for emergency services?
We have not heard there's complaints, so if there are complaints, they should really come to us and explain to us what the problems are, because we will always follow up on any complaints received directly. These shelters are all overseen by New York State regulations. So we go out and we do inspection according to what New York State has required of us. And we look at certain things for safety, for security, for, hot water, heating systems, those kinds of things. So we do what we're requested to do from New York State. Unfortunately, a lot of times these facilities get a lot of use, and they can get worn down. And I know for the Schuyler Inn, they have sought additional state funding to help them make improvements, but it's of course slow, and it requires an infusion of a lot of funding to make it to be where probably you and I would want it to be. But our concern at DSS is the facility safe? Is it protected from the elements? Is there security? Those are the kinds of first priorities that we have in a facility. But again, if there are specific complaints, we need to know about them, and then we can follow up on those specific complaints.
Are we doing anything to look for alternative additional sites?
It is very, very difficult to find programs that are willing to serve the population we're serving primarily. So we have nonprofits who are great partners with us, and they do what they can. I don't know if there's other nonprofits who would be able and better willing and better able to do a better job for what we pay them. If they're there, they can always talk to us.
Is it a question of if we were able to provide additional financial resources, we could possibly get more adequate sites? Do we need to allocate more funding?
Funding what we reimburse the shelters is dictated by New York State. We have to submit a budget to New York State, and they have to approve, because a lot of the funding for these shelters comes through the TANF program and the Safety Net program, which are New York State programs. And again, the state does have all kinds of programs, and they have a whole unit that is responsible for certifying shelters. So they do a lot of oversight and inspection, and they look at their operational plans, their security plans, their evacuation plans. There's a lot of things that these shelters have to do in order to be a New York State certified shelter.
Is it possible for us to get into negotiations with New York State to look for possible alternatives?
I don't think New York State would be doing that. They would rely, of course, on the local community for volunteers to come forward to open up. Yeah.
All right. To be pursued offline later. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Wanda, you muted.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson. I see Sam Fine, Chair of the Social Services Committee, has his hand up, so I'll recognize him next.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Commissioner Mcclay, I have a couple questions. Well, one, I just want to note, I appreciated what Matt Peter brought up. I just want to say, on that topic, one thing I am concerned about that I'd like to learn more about is the rules for individuals who stay in shelters, what they have to pay to those shelters. Just because I've heard some concerns from constituents about people complaining that they go into a shelter, they're paying for that shelter a certain portion of their income, and it makes it difficult for them to kind of move on from there. And I know Matt mentioned that, but I just want to make sure that's when you do send information that's included. But I also wanted to ask, in the documents you provided, Yeah, you acknowledged a lot of the issues with, homelessness that we're facing. And specifically, suggested that the state has to provide, the help if the state provided funding to establish, you said, low barrier shelters to meet their temporary need for shelter, also full state funding to establish temporary housing with intensive mental health case management and psychological services. I think, we can all agree that we want more state funding and action to address these issues, but in the absence of, state funding right now, is there anything that we can do, any more services that we can provide, partnerships that we can have with nonprofit organizations, systems we could provide to, address these needs, both the temporary housing needs, the mental health concerns, and how that, intersects with homelessness?
Well, that again is a whole nother paper. But the point I was making there is this is actually not just an Albany County problem. This is a statewide issue that all the local districts are having across the state, in that we have temporary housing, we have shelters, we have places for people to go, and we work with them once they get in the shelter to try to address whatever barriers they have to getting permanent housing. The people that take up most of the people in shelters don't take up a lot of our time. They come in, they know what they have to do, they work with the shelter staff, and they try to get permanent housing or a job or whatever the issue is. There's a small subset of folks that take up my time, they take up my staff's time, that are extremely difficult, that their problems are way beyond what DSS can handle. So it is a New York State problem, and New York State has neglected, from my perspective, since deinstitutionalization, the severely mentally ill, and who end up rotating through all of our systems, and they go from county to county. They'll go from New York City to Albany to Binghamton. It's a statewide problem. So that was my point, is we need some experts in that area. DSS is not a mental health provider. We're not a substance abuse treatment provider. So we need the experts in those other fields to do something.
Thank you. How about partnerships with our Department of Mental Health to address those issues?
We're in touch with them every day. Yeah, I mean, they have their limits on what they are legally able to do, and they have their limits on what their, what their staffing that's available, and it's all voluntary as well. A lot of their services, if you don't want their services, you don't have to take them.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Fine. Mr. Grimm, you're next.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to follow up on what you said earlier, Michelle, about the Special Assistant to Commissioner. You said it was not a new line. Are you saying somebody is in that position? They're just, the title is being changed?
Let me double check and make sure I'm talking about the same line.
Special Assistant Commissioner, you talked about it earlier.
It's right here. I'll show you the line it was. There it is. Okay, so this is what it is now, right? Special assistant. This is the line that it was being paid out of.
Yes. So it's been, the person has been in that position for multiple years. And it was just in a supervising eligibility examiner position. And we are cleaning up that title to reflect the proper civil service title. That's what's happening with that line.
It's part of our response to that.
As part of our response to the workforce development plan.
All right, so they're getting a raise under a different title then, that's what you're saying?
Probably a 2% increase.
Is it a 2%? They're non-union. So it would be a 2%.
Okay, all right, thanks for clarifying. You said Medicaid is 68 million. That's just one line item. That's the bill we get. That's our county share. It's down a couple of million because of federal enhancements, I think you said. But so you're saying that one line item is over half your budget. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's all county share. It's 100% county share.
Right.
And The 68 is what is appropriated. There is some revenue, there's some tobacco settlement proceeds revenue that reduces that. So it's, the county share of that is 63.7 million.
Okay, there's some offsets. Okay.
Can I just ask one question? Whoever is speaking in the, on the social services line, could you please always identify yourself so we know who's providing the responses? So who was that?
That Joe Viscuso.
Thank you very much. Mr. Grimm, do you have any other questions?
Yeah, just so Joe, you're saying 63.7 million is our actual cost, our county share of Medicaid. And
that's correct.
And that's
it's based. It used to be that Medicaid costs to the counties would rise dramatically every year depending on the usage. But back in 2005 or 6, the county went under a capped environment for Medicaid. So it's more formulaic on how much the county pays rather than driven by usage.
Yeah, well, I guess they capped the increases. That was the state legislation I think you're talking about, isn't it?
Right. They used 2005 as a base year and then capped the increase every year. But then the federal match changes depending on whether or not there's an enhanced federal percentage.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Grimm. I do see that Mr. Epicoro, he has his hand up, so I will recognize him now.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Commissioner, thank you very much for being here. First question I have for you is, as the pandemic comes to an end, or hopefully coming to an end, and we're looking to probably get the eviction moratorium and lifted, do you have like a plan in place, or do you have like a line on this budget to, you know, provide support to people, residents who may be in need of assistance when the eviction moratorium is lifted?
Well, that has been the ERAP program. They're paying renters who are behind in their rent. They're paying a lot of their back rent. So that's one huge piece that should be in place. And that program requires that if the landlord takes the funding from ERAP, they cannot evict someone for 12 months for related to that non-payment, to related to a past non-payment if ERAP had paid. So we're hoping that that will help some people stay a little bit longer in their homes. But we know people are moving and things are happening and codes are, people are moving because of code issues. So we have what programs that we normally have to help people who are homeless. That's what we have. And also there's additional resources right now that I mentioned before called the Emergency Solutions Grant, which is again, a HUD money that is coming through OTDA. It goes to the CARES nonprofit here in Albany, and there's millions of dollars in that also to help people, not as big as ERAP, but to help people with past rent and security deposits and a couple of months of rent. So once ERAP comes up, we expect that emergency solutions money will also kick in.
Do you have when that additional program that you just spoke about, do you know when that would be in effect? Or if it's already in effect, are you able to share a link to us that we can?
Well, it's in effect, and there are multiple nonprofit agencies such as United Tenants, Legal Aid, Housing Coalition, Catholic Charities, I can't remember who else. Equinox. So there's it's been distributed to nonprofits to hand out that funding. So there's multiple nonprofits who have that funding. And so they're ready, they have it. They're ready to use it as soon as there's a need.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Epicoro. Ms. Mcclay, I just want to thank you so much for your presentation. And I know that these past 2 years have really been rough, but you have risen to everything that the county has needed, along with all of the employees of the Department of Social Services. So we just want to thank you for your service. And if there aren't any other questions from any members, all right, I just want to bid you a good evening.
Thank you very much.
Very welcome. We're going to move on to Children, Youth, and Family Services. And in your budget books, that is on starts on page 77 through 92. And our presentation this evening will be given by Commissioner Manning. Are you present, Ms. Manning?
I'm sorry, we were still muted. Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the Audit and Finance Committee. We wish to thank you for the opportunity to present our Department for Children, Youth, and Families 2022 budget. I'm here today with our Deputy Commissioner, Nicole Ward, and our Director of Accounts, Beth O'Neill. So they will assist if there's any questions that you have. In response to, the services that we provide at the department, no service changes will be made. We will be providing the same programming as we have in 2021. In addition, we focus on the children that are a vulnerable population. Children are very vulnerable to abuse or neglect, to parents that are abusing substances or have mental health related issues. So that truly is the population that we are serving. And I did want to let you know that this past year in 2021, we had an RFP put out for our preventive services. And the preventive services is really to prevent a child from either going into foster care or further penetrating the juvenile justice or family court system. And I'm really happy to announce that we are proposing, actually next week at the Social Services Committee, some preventive awards that we would like to give to voluntary agencies in the community. They have provided evidence-based programming for children. And again, evidence-based services really do have better outcomes for our youth. In addition, they're providing wraparound services, so we can wrap the services and supports around a family and hence, prevent a child from leaving their own home community and going into foster care or a juvenile justice placement. So we're really excited about that to really strengthen the family bond, help them with communication skills, and to keep children at home. We have no major reductions in our proposal at this point in time. However, we have retitled and reclassified some of our positions, and that is all part of our comprehensive workforce plan. And I think the comprehensive workforce plan has provided us an opportunity to rethink and redesign our workforce for 2022 and beyond. So this is not a one and done. This is going to be a long-term area that we're going to be focusing on in the department. We're also pleased with the 2022 budget, and we really are grateful for civil service in assisting us with changing some titles and reclassifying. HR has really assisted us, as well as the county executive office, to fill vacancies. Child welfare, CPS workers, there's a shortage throughout New York State. And this is something that we focused on, of really looking at recruitment efforts and retention. So that is something at this point in time, when I submitted the vacancy list, there were 13 caseworkers. We were offered 3 today. They accepted the positions, and we're going to have a couple more coming down in the next week or so. So we really do thank all the departments in assisting us with that. And in addition, we're really happy that the budget then included our positions that were left for the early separation. So those are critical pieces. One is a staff development coordinator, which the staff development coordinator is really key in retaining our staff. They provide all of the training, they coordinate all the training for the caseworkers. In addition, they are a support in providing training across our department for all employees. There's a lot of things when we talk about implicit bias, cultural competency, which are all keys. And when these new staff members come on board, this might be their first time in child welfare because caseworkers are an entry-level position. So we also have our SPOE, which is our single point of entry. The single point of entry is really a collaboration with the health department as well. And they are the centralized point for women who are of childbearing age or have a child up to the age of 5. Then this gives the community one phone number to call, and they navigate the individual on what the needs are for that child and family and immediately hook them up. It's not only our department, but we also collaborate and partner with many community agencies. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank the DCYF employees. They really have, the past 18 months has been a challenge with the pandemic, but not only that, the community violence that has been occurring has been tragic. And they are out in the field and working with these families and these very vulnerable population on a daily basis. So I really do thank them and applaud them for all that they do. Because, the caseworkers, the mental health workers, our care managers, our Healthy Families program, all of these services are essential. And they have been here throughout the pandemic, providing the much needed services and supports to these very challenging families. And they've shown up every day. The department, again, with our budget, we're very conscientious of our expenditures. However, because of the program that we provide, it is very challenging to know the bottom line, the cost that will be in the budget, because a lot of these things are out of our control. Again, if a child is at risk and in the community, we may need to place a child in foster care. Or we need to place a child if the school district identifies they need to be placed because of educational needs. We too pay for that. If a family court judge decides that a child needs to go into OCFS placement, we pay for that. Or if there's a juvenile justice youth that is going to non-secure or secure detention, we also are required to pay for that. So it's hard to predict our budget, but we do the best that we can. I applaud Beth. And so we are here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I am going to ask about, I'm looking at the early intervention fees for services. Increase of $500,000. Hello, can you hear me?
So you said the fees for service?
4509, A4509.
405.
405.
Yeah, early intervention.
Yeah. Please. Yeah, what's your question? Maybe fees for services.
Yeah. Yeah, 44046 and 4059. Did you have a question? Oh, the revenue.
Yeah.
Down to 60,000. Okay, I can.
So Beth will explain the answer to that.
Yes, hi. The change to that's the revenue account that I believe you're speaking about. And that has to do with repayments that we get. And so we try to predict how much we will be receiving back for if the parents or if a rate changes, we may get money back, or if it could be an insurance payment. So that tends to change. And Medicaid payments, we have seen a lot of the insurance reimbursement go down in the EI program over the last several years. The state has taken over as the paying agent, so they're in charge of that. We don't really have any ability to go after that ourselves. That's done by the state fiscal agent.
All right. Mr. Simpson, you have a question?
Yeah, Commissioner, you know that in the recent past, we've met a few times to deal with the issue of handgun violence in Albany. And I'm wondering if you have considered for next year's calendar and whatever support budgeting is required for us to bring together a match between the county and community services and the communities of need in terms of providing alternatives so that we could kind of stave off the systemic pipeline for gun violence. Is that something that you've considered or could consider now?
Well, I know the governor has provided monies. It was called the 2021 Safe Summer. Because when the transition happened between Governor Cuomo and Governor Hochul, they changed it to just a prevention gun service. Initially, we received $50,000 from the state government. We had to have meetings with stakeholders from across the county. They wanted us to really give this money to hyper-local agencies. We had 5 agencies apply. And then once we submitted a plan with those agencies and they approved it, there was an additional $115,000 that the governor's office, Governor Hochul's office, approved. They selected Hood's House of Hoops and the Boys and Girls Club. We had no say in who would receive that money. I was told that the governor had a committee and it was made up of people from her office and local state legislators. So we received about $175,000 that just got approved from the legislature, I believe, at the last legislative meeting, and we will be dispersing it out to those agencies soon. So hopefully that will really help. And this is Nicole Ward. I didn't introduce myself. Sorry. It's okay.
What I have in mind, though, is not as much a budget resource issue as much as it's a better collaboration of existing resources. In other words, we have a number of county programs, some of which, if they're really successful, could be expanded. But my concern is that we have a lot of different silos of organizations in the community that are doing good work. And it seems to make sense that there'll be a synergy of pooling resources to get a better outcome on a systemic basis. And I think that the county has the resources to do the coordination piece that makes the most sense. So that's something that I think we really need to explore.
Yes, and I just wanted to let you know as well, we have a 0 youth detention, which we are expanding further regarding community needs and violence. And we're going to have a focus group with youth and families, hopefully before Thanksgiving. So we are formulating questions to really find out how can we support these youth in the community so they don't turn to any type of negative behaviors.
Well, I'd like to really be involved with that effort. So I'll follow up with you later on. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson, and thank you, Commissioner. Quick question on the line A2960, service to physically handicapped children. How are expenditures trending for the travel mileage and freight line in the current year? How does that proposed 2022 amount of 5.2 million compared to that trend? Because I know there's a big differential there.
Hi, this is Beth O'Neill. That is for the transportation for the preschool program. And there's a lot less spending last year and this current year because there was a period of time where the programs were shut down. So we won't spend anywhere near what we'll spend next year when we have the full program in place.
Okay, so that line is just basically coming back to normalization. Is there any other trends that are going into that increase, or is it literally just normalization?
Well, it is. There was a new RFP that went out we have a brand new contract. The rates have gone up based on the provider's difficulty with hiring the amount of drivers that they need and also gas prices. We only have one provider who bid, and they're also the provider that does neighboring counties. And we're actually right now with our bid, we pay a little bit less than the neighboring counties for the service. But it has gone up on a per bus basis. We did put in some other measures into our RFP and contract this year to try to contain the price. For example, we have different zones that they send buses out of, and under the next contract, we are requiring that they use the same, if they have the ability to use buses between different zones to contain costs, that's a new requirement. So we're hoping to see some benefit from that as well.
Great, thank you. Mr. Simpson, do you have your hand raised again?
I meant to have it lowered. I'm good, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. I just have another question. In regards to foster care and foster care voluntary agency, foster care 8.2 million to 9.4 million, and also the volunteer agency that was created for 2.1 million. Could you just answer the questions on those right there? Appreciate that very much.
Yes, the line, the regular foster care 44405 in that 6119 account has gone up. That one coincides with the 6110 account for foster care. It has to do with the amount of children we have that are whether they're 4E eligible or non-4E eligible. So overall, the foster care did go up, but you'll see that in the 6110, the cost went down. The other line that you're referring to, the voluntary agency, has to do with the raise the age foster care, and we haven't seen those costs as were originally predicted by the state.
Appreciate your response to that. I realize this has been, a long 18 months here that we're going through. And I realize that what we do want to say is that we thank you all for all of the work that you have done. But before I move on, I want to make sure that there aren't any more questions for from any of our members.
I had one. It's Dave
Mr.
Mayo. Yeah, I was just wondering, what do we do to retain caseworkers? I mean, they seem pretty vital, and if we're missing 12 of them, is there anything that the legislature can do, or you yourselves haven't done to retain them?
Again, it's not just an Albany County issue. It's been across the state, and I think it's ever since the pandemic. These workers also our, like I said earlier, our, entry-level workers, therefore, they really don't have a great sense of what caseworker life and a caseworker is. So we've talked about doing like a YouTube video or some type of way to show them what would it look like, having a caseworker shadow another caseworker so they can really see what it's like, because sometimes, especially with the violence we've had in the community, it can be scary out there. And we've had incidents where, shootings are occurring next door to the house that they're visiting. And it's hard. And sometimes it's just not for the people, or unfortunately, their own mental health interferes with their ability. We provide EAP, we encourage people to have support, and our supervisor Bs and our supervisor As are supporting those workers as well.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayo. So before we close this session out, I really just want to express our appreciation to you and your staff for all the hard work that you do. And I just want you to know that we do appreciate you. And before we sign off, I would just like, because this is our Human Services Agency, I'm going to ask Mr. Fine, who is Chair of Social Services, to express his thanks to the different committees that have come before us tonight.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Yeah, I just want to express thanks to all the commissioners. Thank you, Commissioner Mcclay, for coming out. Thank you, Commissioner Manning, all the commissioners that came out, answered our questions. I appreciate all the work you do throughout the year. I know this was an especially difficult year. Sorry, I don't want to leave out the commissioner, veterans. Which one am I forgetting? Veterans and crime victims. I just want to thank, I know this was an especially difficult year for everyone, and you're on the front lines providing services to people in the most need. And I know it wasn't easy. We ask a lot of questions of you because, we want to make sure that we're providing the best service we can. But I want you to know, we all appreciate the work that you put in. Thank you for coming today to answer these questions for us and prepare everything for us.
Thank you. And thank you all for your support.
You're very welcome. And so that is it for tonight. And you know what? I will entertain a motion to just adjourn.
Adjourn, Madam Chair.
Anyone else?
Second.